We're back again with another edition of Virtual Beebe Book Buzz. I almost didn't say it. Beebe Book Buzz. Say it a lot of times. And today we're here with Jackie Powers and Alyssa Staples, and I am Karen Stern, and we are going to chat about the books we've been reading, so in hopes that we can help you find your next great read. We're going to start with some horror today with Alyssa. So do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, definitely. I have been on a horror kick recently. It's so bizarre. You wouldn't think that it would make you feel better, but it is so transportive. It just takes you right out of reality, which is amazing. So yes, one of the recent horror novels I've read is The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. And if you haven't heard of him, Paul Tremblay is just kind of like the king of horror at the moment. It's like the old guard is like Stephen King, and this like new generation of horror writers, Paul Tremblay is just like, he's so great. He's actually written one of my favorite horror books ever, which is called A Head Full of Ghosts, and that was a while ago, maybe like 2016 or even earlier, which is so unique and original, and he utilizes multiple POVs in that. He does the voice of like an 8-year-old girl, and it is so authentic. It makes no sense that he's like a grown man that can do that so well. Just as like a side story, I still think about this. I actually recommended that book to like a young high school girl once at the reference desk, and I like still think about the fact that I hope she's okay because it's so scary. Like immediately after that, I was like, why did I do that? But it's so good. I just love it so much. Anyways, Paul Tremblay also like lives around here. He like used to work in Salem when he was younger. He like definitely like lives in an undisclosed area, like right here. So
Salem would feel appropriate, wouldn't it?
Big fan. Okay, so let's actually talk about this book. So the premise of The Cabin at the End of the World is like pretty straightforward on paper. So 7-year-old Wen is the daughter of 2 dads, Eric and Andrew, and they go to a remote cabin in New Hampshire. So this is like the type of cabin that's 2 miles away from everyone else. Dense woods everywhere, no cell service, of course. Just kind
it's
of
almost a cliche.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, Wen is playing outside in the grass, and the biggest man she's ever seen walks out of the woods, and he introduces himself. He sits down and introduces himself as Leonard. So he kind of starts playing along with her and gaining her trust, and he tells her, none of what's going to happen is your fault. And then 3 more strangers come out of the woods holding homemade weapons. So that's how it kicks off. So yeah, it's like, are you feeling scared yet? It's like, I'm scared just talking about it. So at this point in the book, I'm thinking like, okay, this is your run-of-the-mill home invasion story. Like I was watching it in my mind like a Hollywood blockbuster or something. But I was so wrong. Like, I should have had more faith. Like, of course, Tremblay isn't going to do something typical. So the 2 fathers and Wen like try to keep these strangers out of the house, and inevitably they get in, and the invaders tell them, look, we don't want to hurt you, but we're on a mission to save the world, and there's only one way to do it, and it's an unthinkable sacrifice that they would have to make. So what follows is just it's like 24 hours in the life. It's just paranoia, survival, apocalyptic events, and like this incredibly hard decision, like the hardest decision any human would have to make. And the whole time you're reading it, the point, really, the ultimate point is, are these invaders, these strangers, telling the truth? Is the world really coming to an end, or are they 4 crazy people who wandered out of a doomsday cult and is now torturing his family? Right.
Is it, no, I was just going to say, is it one of those books that leaves you like tired when it's over? Like, it's like, you're like short of breath. You know, when you watch those movies that are like constant
Yes.
action, that you're
100%. So it kind of, the pace is really breakneck. You're going, but he is such a master of the horror craft that it's almost peaks and valleys. So like a good horror movie, there's like tension, you can take a breath, and then tension, then you take a breath. It's kind of like a pulse in the book. So though I didn't want to put it down, there were moments that I could put it down and try to go to sleep and fail. So yeah, like it's constant, but in its own way, it's not kind of at a level 10 straight through like a barreling train, you know. Does that make sense?
Is there any kind of supernatural element to this? I mean, because horror sometimes is and sometimes isn't.
Yeah.
Without giving too much away.
Yeah, no. I can talk about that because I actually want to kind of talk about that because that is what's so special about this author and this book in particular. But Tremblay does this in all his books, really. He walks this incredibly fine line between supernatural and skepticism. He never, he gives the reader so much freedom to believe or not believe.
Right.
And regardless of whether you do believe or not, it's still scary. It's still horror. It's horror either way. Like, are they telling the truth or aren't they? It doesn't matter. This horrible thing is going on. But it's really up to interpretation, which I think that's what I think makes a really good horror novel.
So let's can I just define terms here? Because like for me, I hear the word horror and I go, well, first of all, I go, but the reason I do that is because I'm not like, to me that says blood and guts. But I love a good suspense thriller kind of thing. So
yeah,
what are we talking about in that climb, on that range?
Well, that's a really good question. There is such a big spectrum of like gore factor in horror. It's almost like with romance. There's some very light, kind of innocent romance, and there's some hot, steamy, crazy romance. So you have to find your comfort level and what you like and don't like. And horror is the same way. This one, I'd say, I wouldn't recommend it as like an introductory horror book because it's not really that straightforward. It has its gory moments. I mean, it does have it. This particular one has its gory moments, pretty descriptive.
But
so I would.
They're not. It's not this constant like slaughter sort of thing.
No. Really,
I think of horror. That's what comes to my mind. Like
Yeah. I know, and I think that's a misconception. I mean, there are books that are like that. Just like there are romance that's kind of like all bedroom scenes or whatever you want to call it. And there's horror that's all crazy gore violence too. The horror that I read, what I consider horror, is so much more about the psychological kind of like back and forth of it. It's just to make you feel an emotion. The ones I don't like horror that relies on cheap thrills like gore. I like horror where I'm like screaming for the character because I love them so much and I want them to come out on top, you know.
So totally, like I would totally read that. So it's funny the way these labels like make pictures in our mind that may or may not be true. There's so many, and I'm about to talk about a book that's like that too. So yeah.
Yes, I really do want to express that I'm not a dark person in general, but I love horror because I love books that make me feel. And that's what horror does. It's a really escapist genre, and I really would suggest it to more people than for people who don't think they would like it, if you like suspense and you like thrillers, there's a good chance you may enjoy horror too. It's fast paced. There's like weird dark humor usually, and it's impossible to put them down. Like if you're in a reading slump, pick up a horror book. You will read it in 2 days. I dare you to not read it in 2 days. So yes, have it at the end of the world. Give it a try. You will think about it for a long time after. It's really, really good.
For better or for worse.
Yeah, totally.
In your dream.
For better, I hope.
Okay. Well, I've got one. So I think in this, we're kind of taking it down a notch here, because I have one which also, so I'm going to say this is a book called The Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. And she is kind of a rock star in the sci-fi firmament. She was for a long time the only African-American woman writing sci-fi, and now of course she's not, but this one, and this is where I want to like immediately talk about what this is not your typical sci-fi. In fact, this has very few elements of sci-fi in it. The Parable of the Sower is what I would call speculative fiction, and a lot of people kind of use those terms interchangeably, and this one definitely falls in the speculative fiction point on that scale. I'll tell you a little bit about what the little bit of sci-fi is in there later, but just to start off with that, speculative fiction, as I've said many times before, is when you posit a world that is very much like our own. Take a set of circumstances, maybe a catastrophe, something that's happened that makes you say, what if this happened, and go from there. And that's what she does. This book was published actually in the early 1990s, 1993. And so it's positing a near future, which happens to be the decade that we just entered. Okay,
Wow.
so that's kind of crazy. And I have to say, we're not there yet, but where we are, it's not that hard to imagine in, say, another 40 years, us being in that place, possibly. That's why it's speculative. And so you're, from the very start, you understand this world, and possibly in the last couple months, you understand it even a little bit better than you might have before. And this world that she is asking us to imagine is one where climate change has led to a lot of different outcomes in a lot of different regions of the country. So in some places it's drought and extreme weather conditions. In California, where this is set, it doesn't rain for like 6 years at a time, and then suddenly it pours. Or there are tornadoes in the South, or there are pandemics in the Northeast.
When was this book written again?
1993.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is the scene when we're in North Carolina. No, Northern California is what I was trying to say. And it's very dry, and you can just see she does the setting beautifully. She obviously knows the area well, and you're very much living in a world that you can recognize. The divides between the haves and the have-nots have also grown. So this is also a world where very rich people live in walled off, guarded communities that they leave by helicopter. And there is a little bit of a middle class left, and some of them have their own houses. The really lucky ones live in neighborhoods that have walls around them, but they're still very much, they are having commerce with the outside world, which is lawless, very poor, homeless, drug-addled, so there's a large mass of the population that lives in those conditions. So that's where we've come to. And then the book is basically in 2 parts, and our main character, Lauren Olamina, is this amazing young woman. She's in her teens. We watch her through her teens, and she lives in one of these middle-class wall communities with her father and stepmother and brothers. Her father's a preacher and a college professor. So they still have things, but again, walking outside those walls every day is a dangerous thing, and they're all being taught to shoot, and it's a little bit of this be prepared for the wild west that's out there. Lauren is this, again, really great character, very smart, very forward thinking. She's born with a thing, and this is where the little bit of science fiction comes in, called hyper empathy. Her mother was drug addicted, and because of that, she was born with this condition, which means that she can feel other people's intense feelings, emotions, or pain. So if someone else is hurt, she feels as if exactly as they do. And you can imagine in a dangerous world how dangerous that having that condition would be. Yeah. So where a lot of other people, and this is an interesting part that really chimes with where we are today too, is like where a lot of people are sort of worried, fearful, closing down, wanting to be just caring about being safe. Lauren is thinking ahead. She's thinking to the future. She's thinking of a new way of being. And really what she's doing, and we see this in the first part while she's still living at home in her neighborhood, she's developing these ideas and this strong belief really about a new way of being, which you might call a religion, you might call a philosophy. It is centered around a thing she calls God, but God is not, this is a different idea of God. God has actually changed. The idea of change, that things constantly change, is the center of her religion. Anyway, she, so amidst all this darkness, there's this amazing character who has these really kind of forward-thinking, hopeful thoughts. And she knows that she wants to leave her community, even though it's dangerous out there. She feels that the way forward is for her to move away from where she is, from the kind of stagnation of that place, and try to start something new. That gets accelerated because there is a catastrophe. And without going into too much detail, the second part of the book becomes more like a road movie. So she and a couple other people who have survived decide to move north with these hordes of people who are walking, picture highways with people just walking north on them, in all different states of being. And along the way, they gather other people with them. So you get
the best way to start a movement right there.
Yeah, exactly. So the movement begins. And this was supposed to be a trilogy. Unfortunately, really sadly, Octavia Butler died far too young. She was only in her 50s, and she died in 2006. So she wrote 2 of the books, but the third one never was written. So the second one is called The Parable of the Talents. See, these are biblical references if you're not familiar. So the story is of this character, her growth, her ideas, this huge cast of characters, because there's her whole neighborhood, and you get to know all those people when she's there. And then on the road, you get to know all these other characters who come in, some who she, befriends, some who she fights with, some who she falls in love with. There's all of that going on. And Butler does a great job of bringing all those characters together. And each one of those characters helps her kind of add to her belief system as well. So there's a reason for them. And so then, of course, there's the adventure, right? So this is a story of adventure, of survival, of getting by, of working together. It's, those are the parts that I loved about it. The characters and the survival bits, she does all that very well. And riding through it all is this thread of this new way of being and this hope for the future. And this, they're ultimately trying to get to a place where they can start a community. And so you're rooting for that through the whole book. And it is a very satisfying, hopeful ending. So even though the circumstances are dark, I can definitely tell you that it's not going to depress you in that way. It might depress you in a few other ways, but you get your kind of like satisfying ending.
Karen, does it leave you so that you can just read the one, or do you?
Oh yeah.
You don't. It's not like a cliffhanger necessarily.
No, it's not a cliffhanger. It comes to a resting place for sure.
Okay.
You kind of do want to know. You would like to know, right, like what. And I have to say, I don't know for sure if the Parable of the Talents picks up just from that group of people. I should have found that out before I came on here. But yeah, it does kind of give you a place to rest. So not a
That's good.
That's
and
such an interesting condition, the main character's condition.
very
I mean, it's like the whole, like, the way to build a better world is to put yourself in someone else's shoes and to try and get outside of yourself.
Yeah, there are many times when other characters make that. It's also something they make that comparison. They say, well, if everybody could do this, then the world would be a much better place. I mean, of course, it's a horrifying condition, and it's not one that she wants to share with people. She doesn't even want to let people know she has it because people could use it against her. Anytime she's in one of the, there are different fight scenes and things. She's useless after the first person gets hurt because she's just knocked down by whatever happens to them. So it's a double-edged sword for sure.
Does it help inform the secondary characters? Does Octavia Butler use her condition to build characterization?
Yes.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it definitely is. How people react to her and how, and also how they react to her philosophy and her ideas is, again, that's how you see character being built. And also how they react to the outside situations, the attacks and the things that there are all these people that are on crazy drugs that we've never heard of. Again, it seems to be like medical science fiction, I would say, is what the little bit that exists in this book. People who are on these drugs where they want to watch things and people burn. Like it makes you, it's gross. I mean, so there are some elements of horror, I would actually say, in it, like these people who are just out there.
But kind of maybe a statement on the human differences in the human condition, and sometimes you think, how can that person sleep at night doing X, Y, and Z? I mean, that's like an extreme hyperbole of it. Like, I want to watch someone burn, but at the same time.
Yeah, I think that all the time. I'm not a reality TV fan because that's what it feels like to me. It's like, how can you want to watch that? So yeah, there's a lot of commentary, but it's just overall, it's just a great story. Definitely for fans of Margaret Atwood, Jemison, who I talked last time, all of those, anybody in that sort of genre area. And I would say this is absolutely a YA book as well as an adult book. It's not either or both, it's not either or at all. I would say this would be a great family discussion if you wanted to have if you wanted to talk about something around the dinner table that lets you take where we are and go off onto some tangents and try some thought experiments. This would be a great one.
Yeah, I mean, we only have so much time in this program, but I want to talk to you about this so much more because it really is such a thought experiment. I feel like it could make so many different conversations.
Yes, a lot of different conversations. So that's The Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. And this one is available. And I think
it's upside down.
Oh, nice job. It is available on ebook. We have it and quite a few of the libraries in the system have it. So.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. Mine's on Overdrive. Sorry.
There you go.
Okay.
And Jackie has something different for us.
It's different. It's different. Well, I just finished a book that I have been waiting for it to come out for 6 or 7 years. It's a series by Julia Spencer Fleming. It's a mystery series. I think it's I forget if it was the 8th book or the 9th book. It's well into the series. And they're originally called the Reverend Claire Ferguson Mysteries. But I think now they've added on the other main character, which is the chief of police, Russell, Russ. But so these are mysteries. The first one is called In the Bleak Midwinter, and the most recent one is called Hid from Their Eyes. They're very much in the vein of Louise Penny or Anne Cleeve's Inspector Jimmy Perez series. That kind of Ellie Griffith's, what's her main character's name? I can't think of her name. Ruth Galloway, that series. They're all kind of in that vein. So that it's this kind of sweet spot of mysteries where they're not so cozy that they're like ridiculous. They're not like goofy, like little, like the mysteries, like the cooking mysteries, like what they, you know,
they don't have silly title. Sorry.
They're not like that, but they're not so grim that you can't get through it. Like they're a lot more about the character than they are about the mystery in some cases. Like many people at the library read Louise Penny, and we've kind of always said that sometimes the mystery is like not really the point. Like there are some that are good, there are some that are not as good, but it's you go back to those books for the characters.
Yeah.
This one I had read it. I picked it up like when it was like 4 books in. So I had read a whole bunch, and then I was like kind of year to year waiting. And she was pretty consistent about them coming out. Sometimes it was like 2 years between books. And then all of a sudden in like, must have been like 2014, it just stopped. And like the way the last book had ended was very much a cliff. I mean, there was no,
that's like torture.
But I mean, there was no closure. Like you were just like, okay, well now I'll wait for the next book. And then nothing and nothing and nothing. And there were patrons that would come into the library and be like, what do you know? When is it coming out? Like, I don't know. You know, my mother and sister both read them, and they were like, you know,
make her write something now.
Like, I don't have inside information here. So,
this is like Game of Thrones style.
Yeah. So come to find out, this book, it did just come out in April. We do own it on ebook. The Noble Networks Overdrive collection has like 4 of the books in the series. It has the first one, and then some in the middle, and then this most recent one. Other networks, I just quickly looked at Minuteman's network, and they looked like they had all of them.
And so are these are more mystery than say Penny?
They're not thrillers.
They're not thrillers.
They're not. Not really. I mean, they're very like Louise Penny, very, very Inspector Gamache type.
Okay.
Say procedural. No, it's really a mystery. And the main character is I should tell you who she is, Reverend Claire Ferguson, and she's, I think, in her like mid to late 30s when it starts. She's very interesting. She's from Virginia, but the books take place in upstate New York. And she was in the military. She was like I want to say a helicopter pilot or something in the military for a long time, and then got the calling and became I think it's Episcopalian minister. Mm-hmm. They let women in, whatever one that is. So she ends up at this parish in upstate New York, and the chief of police there is Russ, and he's from the area. He's been there. He's been there, lived there his whole life. He also has a military background. He was in Vietnam, and so he's significantly older, like a good 10 or 15 years older than her. And they immediately have this kind of thing, like
chemistry.
Yeah, there's like a thing, and that progresses, and you know, their relationship evolves. But they are the most interesting part of the book, and it's one of these like, how many people in a small town can get murdered?
You don't care after a while with those things.
No, you don't, and it's fine. And the mysteries are good. I think as these kinds of books go, her mysteries are good. I feel like you're usually surprised at the ending. This most recent one I actually figured out, which is very unlike me. Like, I don't usually figure things. Usually at the end I'm like, oh, like everybody else knew.
Me too.
But this one I sort of guessed. It's not totally clear why she took so long. She does say in her acknowledgments that like 3 people, like her mother, her husband, and like her best friend died within like an 8-month period.
Oh. But
this has been like 6+ years. So I don't know. Who knows? That's a lot of grief. But it does leave it so that she's clearly intended to write another one, whether that happens or not. Like, hopefully she does. But
okay, so we're still not finished.
We're still not finished, and it's interesting in that it picks right up where it's only like 4 months later. So you're reading the book, and you know, there's kind of always a little delay. So I think I read the book, it probably came out in 2014, but it was really like 2012. But like now it's still 2014, but it's 2020. So like, it's a little bit weird because it had been kind of in time, like it was reasonably close to the time that we're in, and now it's a little further off. And it's interesting how that becomes noticeable. The lack of there, obviously people still have phones and smartphones and stuff like that.
Right, but there's a lot of changes that have happened.
It's still not quite the same.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, think about the changes to the world in the last 2 months.
Yeah.
Things happen really quickly.
Yeah.
They do.
But it was really nice to revisit these to see these characters again. And there were entire character plot points from the past that I completely forgot about. I mean, years will do that too. But it was like, oh, I forgot she did that.
I was wondering about that. Do you think it's something someone could pick up and as a read alone, or do you really suggest the series just for the character?
You could, but I wouldn't.
Yeah.
But
it's
did
not.
You say you started on book 4, or did you?
No, I meant no. I
read 1 through 4 all together.
Right, like she was on book 4 when I picked it up, so I read them all at once, and then had to
had to wait.
Yeah. But I had read the first ones all together. And it's interesting. I wouldn't say they. A lot of those authors, you can kind of see them get better as time goes on. I think hers have been pretty consistently well done. She has pretty good secondary characters, some of which I'd forgotten about.
And his play's a big thing there?
Yes.
The Adirondacks or whatever? Not quite the Adirondacks.
It's not really the Adirondacks. They don't really say that. It's just like this kind of vague upstate New York that's fairly rural. It's the police department is like a kind of a county system. It's like a 3-town.
Yeah.
So it's like they're in one town, and then there's like a little bit of a bigger town, and but it's like 6,000 people. I mean, it's not.
Yeah. Okay.
They have like summer people. So I think some parts of it are a little more upscale. So yeah, I think it's supposed to be kind of Lake George-ish too. Like they kind of mentioned somewhere that seems like that, but
okay.
I highly recommend it. I would start at the beginning. Now's a good time.
The first one is called again?
In the Bleak Midwinter.
Bleak Midwinter.
Julia Spencer Fleming.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of Penny, so I think maybe those might
I would try them.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Great. So we just want to let you know that there are, if you need help making sure that you are, because we know everybody's reading electronically at the moment, and you want to get onto all of the books, you have access to all of the books in all of the Massachusetts libraries, all the electronic books in Massachusetts libraries. If you need to know how to get there, head over to our website, wakefieldlibrary.org, click on the big yellow banner that says #WakefieldConnects, and in there under the e-collections button that you can click on, there's a tutorial that tells you how to add all of those consortia to your, whether you're doing it on your phone or some other device. So do that, and then you have access to all these other ebooks out there.
I just want to throw out there, I think I was the last person on earth, and it's so shameful as a librarian, but I'm reading my first ebook ever during this pandemic. I could not do ebooks. I was like, no. I wasn't against them. I just couldn't do it. And
yeah, I feel.
I think I'm like a convert. I totally don't mind it at all. So for anyone watching this who's still hesitant to try an ebook, I never thought I'd be turned.
No.
Turned.
And the other thing that's out there is audiobooks, and a lot of people think, oh, I can never listen. But honestly, when you're doing stuff around the house, and right now we're all stuck in our houses and we're finding lots of little chores to do and things to fix and whatever else, there is nothing better than listening to a story while you're doing that. And if you get a great performer doing the story, it can just take you right away, like, so that you don't want anyone else to talk to you. And it's actually a really good way of escaping into your little world. If you put your
I was gonna say, if you have a fight with your spouse or something, it's just like, ooh, I'm reading now.
Or if your children are being too loud, just like, I'm reading about that. So all of those are also available on electronically. Again, you can get them from the whole state. So one more thing we want to plug is kind of community book read. We're calling it's on the calendar as Book Chat with Librarians on next Wednesday night at next Wednesday night, which is May the 6th at 7:00. You do need to register because we have to have some idea of how many are coming. And you'll receive a link from us to do this Zoom window here. So go to our calendar, again, wakefieldlibrary.org under events and activities, and you will see the calendar there where you can register. And that is just to talk about whatever, right? We're talking about whatever you're reading, whatever's taking you away right now, books, podcasts, movies, anything. It's just a general chat, and it's a great way to get more suggestions about things to read. So we hope to see you there, and we will hope to see you here again in a couple of weeks' time for the next edition of Beebe Book Buzz. Thank you for coming.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.